So good morning. We're here to speak today to you about a topic of child protection. And it's a webinar for parents and for adults. And as you'll learn, it's everyone's responsibility for child protection. So we're going to speak about that this morning and talk about what we can do. And Ms. Ilinca is going to talk about the signs of child protection. So Ms. Emily, we'll just get you to the next slide and then we'll introduce ourselves, I think. Well, actually, the objectives for today. So we're going to talk about what is child protection, the types of abuse, your role as a parent, our role as teachers in school, as a community, and Verita's role in how we can protect children. So let's go. Miss Emily.
Okay, so before we get into a lot of what we're going to talk about, I thought that this quotation was very important when we talk about not only children, but just child protection in general. And as a teacher, I always understood Dr. Seuss, as you probably have read to your children. But the idea of a person being a person, no matter how small, is that the children that we interact with, whether they be our own children or as a teacher, they have the same needs, the same wants. They are like us, just they need a bit of help to get to where we would be. And I think it's always important to have this attitude of treating children as people. They're not necessarily their role. As a child, they are individuals with, ideas and wants, and can sometimes be very different. And I always just love this quotation, and it really gives me perspective as a teacher to when I interact with children. So
thank you, Emily. It's a great perspective. So who are the people involved in today's webinar? So we're going to introduce ourselves. So we'll go to the next, there we go. So Ms. Ilinca, you're going to introduce yourself this morning.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Ilinca. For those of you who don't know, I am the school counselor. I'm also the deputy DSL. So that means I'm part of the student support team as well. And I'm here for any concerns regarding the emotional aspects of children and their safeguarding. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm Teresa Fry, go by T, Miss T. So as a principal, I'm the designated safeguarding lead of the school, which means that as I lead the team in any issues around child protection, child abuse, and I'm also involved in this student support team that's led by by Miss Emily. So thank you.
I'm Miss Emily. I am the student support coordinator, which means that I deal with a lot of managing students who might need a little bit of extra help, which also includes students dealing with these particular issues we'll talk about today. And also I'm the secondary SENCo, so it's in an academic sense, making sure that our students are taken care of and supported when they're at school.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So that's our team. So basically, we're going to start with what is child protection. It's a word that that maybe we don't all understand, but it's basically about safeguarding or protecting our children from abuse, neglect, and violence and exploitation. And so you can see on the slide, I don't need to read it to you, but it is part of the UN Convention that children have the right to protection in their home and out of their home. And so as a country and as that we adhere to those UN conventions. So it's really important that we speak about this with parents. So this is a important part of what we do. The number one role of our school is that our children are safe, and then we educate our children from there. We always think, oh, they're here to learn. They're here to be safe and then learn. Children can't learn when they're not in a safe environment. And so children don't thrive if they're not in a safe environment. So this is really important. And this is why the UN has really made this a declaration. So it's all of our responsibilities to protect our children. And it seems like, I mean, I'm speaking a bit seriously, but it is a serious matter. It's all of our responsibility to protect our children, to keep them free of abuse and maltreatment, to prevent harm, to ensure that they grow up with what they need, their needs are met, and to take action when a child is when something is going on for a child that is not meeting those needs. So it's all of our responsibility, even if we say, well, it's not my child, they're all our children. So that's the standpoint that we come from as a school, and as a person, I come from that standpoint as well. So that's part of the child protection, so definition. So if you have questions as we're going through, please put them in the chat, the Q&A, You'll see at the bottom, and we will definitely come to your questions as we go through the seminar, okay, or the webinar. So next slide, let's see where we are. So the school safeguarding leads. So Ms. Ilinca and I both said, oh, we are the school safeguarding leads, meaning the designated safeguarding lead is me, and Ilinca is the supporting safeguarding lead. So what are our jobs at the school? So why do we have these positions? Well, it's a senior member of the staff. We have training, and so Ilinca has also been trained, and so have our other members of the team, to be able to recognize abuse and to deal with it in the way that it should be. So we take the responsibility for safeguarding children. We make sure the staff is trained. We make sure that our staff is screened for criminal records. We encourage children, and we speak to children about these matters, and we encourage them to come forward. We refer cases of neglect, serious neglect or abuse to local authorities where required. We work with the IT technicians at our school to talk about digital safety and online safety for children. We talk with our school nurses when we recognize that a child may have an injury that's suspicious to us, or if the child is not sure about where it happened or how it happened, we need to contact the parents to find out how this injury happened. We raise awareness to parents and to the community about these issues of child abuse and neglect. And again, at the bottom one, it says we ensure all staff have training in child protection. So every one of our staff members have done a child safeguarding course through the UK, through our COBIS accredited body. So thank you. So if you have any questions, please just remember, write them in the chat. So these are just at Verita, what we believe in. And so I just highlighted the words. So we believe children should never experience abuse. And we promote the welfare of children, and we're committed to safeguarding because it's everyone's responsibility. And through that, we take a child-centered approach, and we really look at the needs of the child. And at the very bottom of the slide, you can see that there is a Romanian law, and that we put that in the bottom. So we're affiliated with we understand and know the Romanian laws. Ms. Ilinca has done a lot of the research on this part for our school. So I'll just let you read that really slowly for yourself. And again, we'll have this recorded and that you can go through it again if you're not sure what we were talking about today. So that's at Verita. All right, so thanks, Miss Emily. So I'm going to turn this over to Miss Ilinca, and she's going to go from a more clinician viewpoint about child abuse and neglect.
I think that for starters, we have a parent poll, Ms. T, don't we, for the child abuse, and then I can talk about it afterwards. We just wanted to see how you view it. What are your perspectives on it, and kind of see where we need to offer more information regarding it. So you have a poll coming up right now. Let's answer those questions first.
We'll take about 15 seconds to kind of go through those really quickly. Just whatever your first reaction is to the question, just go ahead and put that down. Okay, Ms. Emily, do you want to close the poll, and we'll see how we vote. There we go. Oh, did it close the poll? Oh, there we go. Okay. There you go, Ms. Ilinca.
Okay, let's see. It looks like the majority of people pretty much had the same answers for everything, but not all the questions. So that's good. That leaves room for debate. Okay, so we're going to close the poll off now, and I think we're going to move on to the next slide. So we can discuss further we can discuss some myths before. We thought this might be interesting, going from the questions to the myths, and then actually looking at some definitions, some signs, and seeing how all of this is connected. So let's look at the first one. It's really the questions that have been transformed into sentences. So we'll go through them. The first one being that it's abuse only if it's violent. So this means that pretty often I hear the fact that, oh, if it didn't leave a mark, it's probably not abuse. We think of abuse as something that is extremely violent, that doesn't occur very often, that is maybe a one-time sort of situation. But most of the time, when we think of at least the neglect and the emotional side of things, it's abuse, even if it happens on a regular basis. So it can be a series of events that have taken place. It doesn't have to be violent, at least when it comes to the neglect or the emotional abuse. It's things that don't really leave a mark. It's not something we can see. We can't really see the violence of it, to put it that way. So Miss Emily, if you have anything to add at any point, we can just do that. Okay, well, no, we can go back because there were some more. Did we not want to go through them? Okay, only bad people abuse their children. I think this was the one that had the most different responses in the poll. It's kind of odd in a way, or strange, to define people as good or bad. But what we mean by this, what we wanted to talk about, was the fact that, most of the time when people abuse, they don't know that they're doing that. So unless it comes to actual physical abuse of somebody, you don't know that you might be neglecting someone. You don't know that you might be emotionally, taking something away from them. So it's really not about bad people doing this. It's about being unaware of doing this. And then we have abuse doesn't happen in good families. Again, it kind of goes back to the same thing. You might be unaware that this is happening, or, you don't know what to look out for. Most child abusers are strangers. Unfortunately, it's quite the opposite way around. Most of the child abusers are people that are close to the family, either within the actual close circle of the family. Abused children grow up to be abusers? Well, no, not necessarily, because most people could realize what they have been through and change their pattern. So if abuse has been going on within the family for generations and generations, it takes at least one person to break that cycle. You realize that this isn't right. Like, I've heard about this, I've read about this, I know it's not supposed to be happening this way. And then the cycle kind of ends, the abuse ends with me. And it's just a one-time instance. We've spoken about this. It's a pattern. It's an algorithm that happens. It's a pattern of behaviors and attitudes, and we'll get more into what it actually is later. And then a funny one that I thought together with Miss T and Miss Emily was that I learned this way and I turned out fine. Meaning that I hear this quite a lot, especially when I work with Romanian families. Like a little spanking is not going to do anything bad. I got spanked by my parents, and I turned out fine. But really, if we want to go down this road and look at what fine means, we're going to find that it's not really that okay. And that even though we might feel fine, we definitely have some behaviors that are, could be labeled as unhealthy and so on. So it's really not something we want to perpetuate and continue doing.
And I think this, sorry to interrupt, this does tie into the way that we are at school. So the idea behind the training and, new methods of teaching is that we don't want to perpetuate these kinds of standards of education of, essentially verbal abuse, or, have these things go on in the classroom, because we want to work both with you as parents and us as teachers.
And I like that Miss Emily said the word fine. So we have to define what that means. And so is fine good enough? And so if we want our children to thrive, and to do something different, maybe fine needs to change. So that's something to think about as well.
And also maybe surviving and being fine is not really the point of things, and managing through the day. It's more about like enjoying life as well. So fine is really a word we're not aiming for. Right, so here we have the actual definition of what it is. So it could be from a parent or a caregiver, but it's really an action or failing to act that causes injury, death, or emotional harm or risk. But this is pretty vague. So we're going to break it down a little bit into different types, and we're going to look at how often it happens, because like I said, it's not something that we think of that is, happens very rarely, and definitely not in good families. Literally, it happens every 10 seconds a report is made. So unfortunately, it's something that we deal with quite a lot that we need to take seriously. But when I think of the definition of child abuse, I'm thinking about a series of events or one event that will change the way this child, this person is going to be functioning from either a physical point of view or a mental point of view. So if we're talking about a physical one, of course, things will be changing biologically as well. If we're talking about an emotional one, we're going to see a change in personality patterns and everything like that. So anything that changes these two, we're talking about abuse. Okay, and these are the 4 major types that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start off with the physical one, which is the one that's easier to grasp when we're talking about it. So it means basically any non-accidental act or behavior causing injury or, you know, any sort of marks on the body, any sort of physical harm. This one, I don't think I need to go into detail too much, but at least in the Romanian culture, I feel like it's important to point out that, yes, even a little spanking to get the child motivated to do something or to show them who the authority is, this does count as abuse as well. It doesn't matter that we intend to do it for their own well-being because they learn better this way. No, we should think of other ways to do this, because any sort of physical hitting of the child kind of falls under this category. Then we have the emotional one. And like I said, it's a pattern of behavior that impairs a child's emotional development or sense of self-worth. So this could be anything from constant criticism, threats, rejecting them, withholding love or support or guidance. So literally any of these. You know, we don't want to be too concerned about small things. So such as if a child says, you know, I think I can be the greatest singer, I can go on Romania's Got Talent, I'm going to win it. By saying, you know, I think you need to practice a bit more before you do that, that's not going to be, you know, that's not going to be an emotional abuse, because I'm not supporting them. It's more about the way things are said. You know, you can say anything you want to your child, but just phrasing it in a proper manner that is not going to damage them long term. That would be what we aim for. And then neglect is the deprivation of basic needs, but we're also looking at the emotional sides as well. So anything that has to do with their the safeguarding regarding, you know, food, shelter, anything like that falls under the neglect side of things. So at least in school, when we look at neglect, because it's a pretty tough one to find, we're looking at children who are not always properly dressed for the weather outside. We're looking at children who have not the proper hygiene, you know, who, when they bring snacks, when they used to bring snacks, at least it would be a snack that didn't really make sense. So it would be like chocolate with some something next to it. And it didn't really look like a lunch or a snack that was packed by a parent or by an adult. So these are signs that we look for at school. And then the sexual abuse, this is something, it's a form of child abuse that includes sexual activity or not. So it could be harassment as well, in the sense that exposing a child to any pornographic material, for example, or an actual intercourse taking place, having him or her view this is child abuse as well, so in the sense of sexual abuse. So yeah, this is it for the 4 major types. And I thought it would be useful to put together just a little list of signs that we can look out for, both us, of course, because this is what we do here, but you as well as a parent. So I put up there any extreme behavioral changes. So if your child is more on the introverted side of things, if they suddenly, like throughout the week, just become explosive in their behavior, I'm not even talking about being angry. I'm talking about being very giggly, extremely happy, doesn't need to sleep anymore, has all this energy, doesn't even need to eat, and just is very happy about things. That would also, for me, would be a red flag, because you don't go from one extreme to the other without there's something causing a big change like that. And of course, if your child goes from being like this, like very happy and bubbly and everything, to being very silent, not really interacting with you, refusing to partake in things, of course, that is also a pretty big sign. But some smaller ones that we want to look at that kind of touch upon all the signs, all the types of abuse would be: the first one, a refusal to show a certain part of the body. So this would be linked to the sexual abuse or harassment. not wanting to show either because the child has been told they can't show that part of the body, or because they feel ashamed of it. So but we have to be careful with this one because it's really depending on the age. So you want to be careful, if your child is already over a certain age, you don't want to insist too much on them displaying their body for you, because that would be inappropriate. So this is one that you can maybe consult with somebody else. Inexplicable physical pains. This could be either from physical abuse or emotional one as well. I think, it's pretty relevant to talk about migraines or headaches. When we get angry, we get that, because our body is obviously linked to what we feel and everything. So if we start having tummy aches all the time, if things are just hurting, but we can't really find a reason for this, like we've checked at the doctor, nothing's wrong, we want to look at some physical manifestations of things that are going on the inside. Okay, so this is also something you want to check out the doctor. Explanations that don't add up. Again, depending on the age, and you know your child the best. They might make up things, but if you ask a lot of questions and they tell you one side of the story, they tell your partner a different side of the story, they tell the teacher a whole other story, you might want to check in with this one. Then we have two at the bottom: excessive people pleasing and or clinginess, and being fearful, quiet, and reluctant to speak. This kind of shows that this child has been around an adult that has been entirely too demanding. And this child has learned that they have to people please in order to basically survive, because as a child, they are dependent on the adult. So they've learned that they have to please them in order to do well in life. It's almost like a biological response to this. And it does fall under the emotional abuse side of things. And then we have, again, going back to the physical, unusual blinking, shaking, stuttering, or flinching. So I'm talking about, a lot of kids stutter, but if yours just suddenly at the age of, 7, 10, like above any age that would still be stuttering, if they suddenly just start doing that, that would be a red flag for me. Also, any unusual blinking and like having your eyes shut like this and then opening them wide again, any of this is a sign that, something's going on. And sudden change in eating and or sleeping habits, big one. Big red flag for any of these, either eating too much or too little, not sleeping at all, or sleeping too much. But again, as a change, if it's a pattern, it's not a problem. And please don't get scared basically by these like excessive people pleasing. And these are pretty common things. If you are thinking that any of this is going on, consult with me or with anybody else, because it's not just one of these little boxes that we look at. It's really all of them that we put together. It's not just one sign. So thank you. Let's, any questions now would be the time for that.
Yeah, so if you have any questions and you want to put them in the Q&A, Ilinca, myself, or Emily be happy to answer those questions for you. Or we were also saying, if you feel uncomfortable putting the questions in today, at the end of this presentation, we'll have an email address for Ilinca. We're more than happy to have you email Ilinca with questions that she could answer, or if you need resources or you'd like to find someone that you could talk to outside the school, she could direct you in that way. And it's very confidential, 100% confidential. So please know that that's available for you as well. All right, there's no questions, so thank you. We'll go to the next slide.
So as far as I know, there's another parent poll, which is a yes/no question. So I think we'll have a couple of minutes for this one.
We'll leave it open for 15 more seconds and then we'll shut the poll, and Ms. Ilinca will come and speak to that one as well. Thank you. Okay, we're going to close the poll and let's see what that looks like.
Okay, so I see the first one is divided. It's 46% and 54. The second one is majority yes. So we should ask as many questions as possible. And then the last one, should you postpone such a conversation? No, only 2 answers were a yes. And we'll go right into that and talk about these 3 questions. I realize now, by having such a conversation, I meant the conversation where the child is disclosing to you, because this is what we're talking about right now, when they're disclosing to you the fact that something has happened to them. Okay, so if they come up to you or to us, this is a process that we're all involved in at school as well. These are pretty much the steps that we want to go through if it ever happens that they should come forward to us. So right here we have the most important part of it. If your child approaches you and you notice they're acting a little bit weird, they're shyer than usual, they really look like they're reluctant to talk about something, please do make the time to do this with them, because oftentimes they're just going to get up the courage to do it once, and most likely it's not going to happen again. So please put aside anything that you might have to do at that time. Allow them that, 15 seconds or whatever it takes to determine what they want to talk about. And if it really looks like this is something they want to bring up, please put anything else aside, because they're not going to come to you a second time. So the most important part would be to secure the child before trying to solve the situation. If your child has been through this, what they need is to feel that they are not in danger anymore. So before going forward with trying to find solutions and trying to find the person who did this and punish them and, go through the rest of the process, please, let's just make sure that the child feels safe in that moment with you. So how do we do this? We do this by remaining calm. And I know this is almost impossible to ask of any adult when we hear about this, especially if it's our own child. And that's why I thought it was important to talk about, should you show visible emotion when they tell this to you? Because you might want to show them through your anger or through your sadness or frustration or surprise that you care. It's our way of showing, like, I'm going to get very angry when you're telling me this because I care about you and I can't believe this happened to you. But when we show all of this, we're showing them that it is very severe. We're very concerned about this in a negative way, and we're going to panic them even further. So what we want to do is to remain calm in that moment, get down on their level, just don't be standing looking down at them. Try to get on your knees, whatever, and talk to them eye to eye. Speak slowly and softly. When they talk to you, regardless of how much they stutter or they don't, or the words that they use, they might be swearing or anything like that, don't interrupt them, don't correct them. And the most important part of all, and we're going to go back to this with the 3 questions down there, don't turn it into a questioning, because it's going to make the child shut down completely. So if they come to you and they tell you this has happened, and you start asking what, who, where, who were you with, how did you get there, and all of this, they're just going to back up, because it's going to feel like a threat again, like, oh, now I have to answer all these questions. I don't know, I'm scared, like, I don't want to do this. Maybe I just want to be comforted now. Which brings us back to the last one, the offering physical comfort only if they allow it to, depending on what they have been through, and depending if it is your own child or a neighbor's child or something like that. Don't go in for a hug unless you ask first, because you don't know what they've been through. They might not want that physical contact. And a really important one here that I skipped out on was to reflect what they're saying. And this is something that we use a lot in counseling and in therapy, and I think all of us in school are used to doing that. It's sort of our way to support that person when they're telling us something. So if a child were to come up to me and say, it was a very scary situation, I was so scared, and what happened? I would say, yeah, it sounds really scary what happened to you. I'm basically saying, reflecting and saying the exact same thing back to them, showing that I'm listening, I'm here with you, I validate what you're saying to me, and I understand it. So what you want to say afterwards, if you want to, because you do want to get more information and start doing things, would be to use one of the following sentences. Would be, tell me more about this. It kind of, so no open-ended questions, that's what we're aiming for. Kind of tell me more, explain to me how it happened, describe it to me, and slowly get into the details of what actually happened. So let's move on. Okay. Miss Emily, I think this was you.
Yes. So the idea of this slide is just to talk a little bit about what all of our roles, and we've said all of our roles because as teachers, or Miss Ilinca as a counsellor, or Miss Tia's and admin, we're all here to do the following, which is on the slide. And I'm obviously not going to read them, but I'll talk a little bit about how they all connect. So the idea is, we've mentioned previously in our conversation here that we will recognize. So when a child does come to school, we monitor, we take time to not only get to know them, which is a core part of Verita's philosophy, we build that relationship, but we're there to support them. We notice things about them. So we're constantly, this particular child or this student is a bit off today, and there's no tangible reason for it, but the fact that we have built that relationship and we know that child is so important. So we can say, this child is a bit off today. And so then we can go into how we can support them. And then from there, it's our job to take a sense of action. So what can we do at school? A lot of times is just creating that open communication between, teachers, the support system we have at school, but also you as parents. So to make sure that we have that communication open to, again, support the child. So all of these are interconnected. We're also trying to create a sense of accountability and prevention at the school. So this is why we all teachers take the educare courses. This is why we're constantly doing professional development. We're constantly raising awareness. We are, celebrating certain students. We are bringing to light a lot of this stuff and being accountable. So when these things happen, we know, how we can, support, and giving ourselves that responsibility. Because as parents, you obviously know your responsibility to children, but we need to make sure that we're also accountable on our side. So a lot of it is this sense of teamwork. And so, yeah, that's our roles.
Okay, I think we have a video. We're gonna, it's a 3-minute video. It's and then we have a closure with you right after the video. So hopefully it plays well, and we'll have another moment with you.
You might often hear, children are our hope for a better future. What if you heard instead, we're making a better future for all children possible? You will. Across people, relationships, and communities, we're creating a new standard for the next generation. This generation will thrive, free of adversity. And the time for this change is now. For too long, early negative events have impacted the health and well-being of children and the adults they become. These negative events are known as adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs. The science of ACEs shows the effects of growing up exposed to violence, abuse, and family mental health conditions or substance use disorders. ACEs can lead to extreme or repetitive stress, known as toxic stress, that can impact a child's developing brain. They can increase risk for teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, substance use, and chronic health problems. They can also increase the risk of high school dropouts and unemployment. The ripple effects can be felt over a lifetime. The good news is, prevention is possible. Relationships and environments that provide positive childhood experiences give every child what they need to stay connected and healthy throughout life. Everyone can help create connection and a sense of belonging by supporting children and families where you live and work. That's where you come in. You can look for ways to help friends, neighbors, and coworkers, and maybe even people you don't know. As a friend or neighbor, you can offer to make a meal for a family in need, or drive a parent or child where they need to go. As a coworker, you can be there to listen to your colleagues, offer support for what they need, and follow up to see how they're doing. Take breaks and have lunch together. Look for signs of depression and encourage your coworkers to seek help. You can make returning to work easy for new parents by helping with their workload, or start a parent support group. As a mentor, you can volunteer to work with young people, sign up to read to or tutor students. Parenting is hard. Support helps parents and children, even in the best of situations. Support community programs that provide safe and healthy conditions for all families. Healthy childhoods, supportive relationships, and resilient communities start now with your help. What will you do? Everyone can raise awareness about community solutions that provide safe and healthy conditions for all children and families. Learn more about preventing adverse childhood experiences.
Thank you, Emily, for that.
So I just wanted to do a very quick recap. So the idea behind this is not something that we're doing for the next 2 years of, the child's life. This is something that is going to follow them, and something that you can support in as a parent, but also in parent communities. And again, this is, these are tools and skills that they can build, so when your children become adults, they can not only support themselves, but support each other in a more effective way. And I think it's something to think about. It is a kind of, the beginning of the video was a little bit scary, but it's something quite serious to think about. And like we've mentioned before, so as we've said, if you do have questions, or, we are here for support and guidance. So there's nothing wrong with asking these questions. So please do use us as a sounding board for this kind of thing. So please put it in the chat.
So thank you to Ilinca and Emily for hosting this webinar today. And we hope that we found the information insightful. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the school. And we thank you for attending today.